We want to welcome everybody out today to episode 352 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris.
And my name's Chrissy. Today we're recording out of the Mountain West Hard Cider facilities right here in Salt Lake City. These guys have been so great, and they're letting us use their conference room for us to record some of these podcast interviews that we get to put out to you guys. So come stop by and grab some hard ciders, say hi to them, and just come support them for being such a rad local business. Their address is 425 North, 400 West in Salt Lake City, just north of the Gateway.
And if this is your first time listening to us and you're like, what is this podcast? Well, this podcast is all about showcasing awesome people right here in Salt Lake City. We get to talk to musicians, artists, business owners, restaurant owners, breweries, distilleries, food truck owners. I think you guys get the gist. Really anyone that might have a cool story.
Like today on the podcast, we get to sit down with Hammond Chamberlain and find out his story. Hammond is a local Salt Lake City podcaster, and he's involved in a few different podcasts, so it was really great to bring him on today's show and find out his story. We're going to get into that conversation here shortly.
Hey, before we get into this conversation, I do want to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsor for this episode, Five Wives Vodka. We're going to be telling you more about them a little bit later on in the podcast.
And don't forget to head on over to our website, iamsaltlake.com, which we have recently revamped. This is where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast. You can listen to them if you haven't, and this is where you can also purchase your very own I Am Salt Lake t-shirt. Just hit that shop tab up top.
And just to mention on these t-shirts, guys, these things are awesome. We got them in green, gray, and yellow. And they are buttery soft.
Oh man, we had them at the farmer's market, and people would stop by and just feel them and tell us how soft and wonderful the t-shirts were.
All right, guys, here's that conversation with local Salt Lake City podcaster Hammond Chamberlain when he came and sat down with us. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. We'll get chatting, right?
Okay, that's fine.
I'm here to find, it's Hammond Chamberlain, right? Just so I pronounce it right. What a unique name.
Well, my full name is James Henry Hammond Chamberlain.
That is a very regal name.
Yeah, it's old Southern name. My mom was a Hammond, and so they just stuck a Chamberlain on at the end.
Okay.
I'm named after my great-great-grandfather or something. And so they started calling me Hammond, and it stuck, which is good because there's just way too many Jameses in the world.
Really?
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. You're right. Did you grow up here in Utah then?
No, my dad was Air Force. And so I ended up going to 14 different schools in the 11 years of school that I went to.
I find that happens a lot on podcasts for some reason. A lot of people that we bring in here
military kids.
are military kids.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is because you get what's good at what I call cocktail party skills. This very superficial conversation. You come in, you say something entertaining, you say something informative, and you're in, you're out. And it's all kind of superficial because you're leaving and coming and going so often with schools and with friendships that you kind of put up walls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this idea of being conversational and kind of good cocktail party skills is something that works really well with podcasting, but I also think it's something that works really well as far as a life skill, as far as that kind of life goes.
Because you're forced to learn to interact with new people and different types of people constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
We're going to get into your podcast because I know you do a lot of podcasts. You've been doing it for a while, but I don't want to miss this question. I usually start the podcast with this question, Hammond, is what did your childhood smell like?
My mom kept a lot of steamer trunks of keepsakes, and she always put in this particular kind of soap in it. And I don't know what it is, but it's that soap that my mom stuck in the
Just that faint smell.
Yeah, because it was in all the keepsakes. And even now, as I find these steamer trunks as I'm older and I'm going through things to show my kids or whatever it is, that smell's still there. And I don't know what it is. It's some frou-frou, flowery soap that she stuck in there to make things not smell like mildew.
So if you moved around a lot, where do you call home then?
Now here. I've been here since 1988 when I came out here to go to college.
Where did you go to college?
I actually went to Brigham Young University.
Oh.
Is that hard for you to say?
It's a weird one. No, it's a weird thing to say because everyone who knows me now, the first thing out of their mouth is, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for listeners, he's wearing a Heavy Metal Shop t-shirt. He's got a goatee. I mean, he doesn't look like a traditional BYU.
And to be honest with you, I have not been to church since 1999. I'm married to a nice Catholic girl, and I am
No
thrilled.
judgment here, man. No judgment here. Yeah, as long
I
as
probably haven't been since 1999 either. Just off and on, maybe.
It's fun. So, I mean, were you a good kid? I mean, if you went to BYU, you must have been a good kid.
Yeah, I was a boring kid.
You didn't get into trouble.
No,
and all of
I was
that.
an only child, and I played harmonica a lot. I learned how to play a little bit of piano. I played sports.
Did you ever feel isolated being an only child and traveling around?
Yes, it was a weird thing. And again, it kind of adds to that superficial social skill thing because I didn't have a sibling kind of going through it with me.
Right.
And my oldest friends, I mean, I've got a friend that I've known since first grade, but we put in a lot of work, and she's in like Iowa or something now and married and has her own family. And it takes effort for us to chat on occasion.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond that, I know of people that I've been around, but my oldest friends now are the ones I've known for the last, 12, 15 years.
So what did you do? I mean, as a kid growing up, like what did you do to entertain yourself, or where was your happy space?
Lots. Okay. So when I was really young, it was like action figures and puzzles and finding things to collect. I've always been kind of a collector. As I moved into high school, it was sports and more music. Then as I got into college, it was, I played in bar bands and did theater and kind of created a social structure just because of what I was doing. It had nothing to do with who I was hanging out with as much as what I was doing created the social structure.
Right. Which is cool because you probably got to hang around a lot of creative people.
Mm-hmm. I did. In fact, a couple of the people I went to college with was Neil Abu, who did In the Company of Men. Aaron Eckhart was in school with me. And Catherine Willis, who was in Friday Night Lights.
Okay.
We all were at
Just
BYU in
hanging
the
out
theater department together, yeah.
And what year did you say you went to BYU? 88?
88 to 94.
Okay, and you studied theater?
I was a sociology criminal deviance major.
Whoa.
And I spent a ton of time in the theater department for fun.
Holy cow, that is awesome.
So you were a good kid, didn't get kicked out of BYU
No,
then?
I did not.
Because I always hear those stories, right?
I did have one trip to Standards because of a paper I wrote about my last year there. I wrote a paper on homosexual couples raising children.
Oh, did that go over very well?
This was in 94, and I got called into Standards for that paper. But other than that, I was really under the radar.
Okay, say your major again.
Sociology with a criminal deviance emphasis.
Wow. So this is fascinating to me. What did you, what were you planning on doing with it?
Well, I initially, as soon as I graduated, got a job working at the prison.
Okay, yeah, that's right. You were telling us that.
But then after just a few months, I realized that I was not built for searching and dealing with that kind of environment. So I went to the Salt Lake County Jail when Valley Mental Health had the contract, and I was a crisis worker there for 6 years doing suicide prevention and crisis intervention.
Was that ever hard?
Yes, it was a very hard job. In fact, after I got married, my wife was like, hey, I have a good job as a pharmaceutical rep. Why don't you go do something fun that makes you human again?
Yeah, because you probably have to shut down and disassociate.
She's like, I don't like my husband.
She's like, no, you're depressed.
No, because I really did. I was shutting down parts of my personality because you could not react to things like normal people do.
Right.
I mean, horrible things happen and you just have to go through them.
Yeah.
You hear these horrible stories and you can't react. Mm-hmm. People say horrible things to you and you can't react. So the whole time you're shaving off parts of your personality. It was a hard job.
Oh, yeah.
Were you up at the point of the mountain?
That's where I started, but then the Salt Lake County Jail, I primarily was where the library is now.
Is it true? And I mean, we're going to get off on a little tangent here. I apologize. Well, I don't. Were most of the people in prisons just drug offenders? That's what I've heard. They're mostly just drug offenders.
When I was I was only at the prison for a very short time.
Okay.
I spent a little bit of time working at a halfway house. There were a lot of drug offenses, and even if it wasn't a primary offense, it was a secondary offense.
Yeah, because sometimes I wonder, it's like, are prisons just full of, simple drug offenses? A little bit of marijuana.
I will say that there's nothing simple about it.
Yeah.
Because the collateral damage that comes from criminalization of certain things is never simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's bounce forward. I want to. So much podcast talk. I want to talk with you.
Look, I want to talk about prison.
No. We
criminal
maybe
deviancy.
Get back there. Because one of the podcasts you do is for that kind of that crisis stuff.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. I don't even know if I can honestly answer it. 100% honest. Do you remember what your first podcast that you listened to was?
Yes, it was. It was called Forgotten Flicks.
And how did you find it?
I typed in Bruce Campbell and Army of Darkness into a search engine
on Google.
No, it was on the
Alta Vista.
Ask Jeeves.
No, it was my first iPod, and it was like 2010. 2009.
Okay.
And I was.
You still had an iPod?
Yeah, it was I was way behind the curve.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair.
I had a BlackBerry until the iPhone 4.
That's not bad either. No.
Yeah, that's better than some people.
I think iPhone 4 was my first smartphone.
I had a Palm Pilot, so.
I did too for a while.
Did you?
Yeah.
I was so excited when I found out I could get online.
Yeah, I remember that too.
So you found this podcast?
Yeah, it was Forgotten Flicks. It was hosted by Joel Robertson and Jason Grooms, and they were covering Army of Darkness, which is my favorite movie of all time. And
good movie.
Yeah, I watch it every Easter weekend, or actually every Ash Wednesday is when I watch it, to be honest with you. And so I listened to that. I started communicating with them. Fast forward a couple of years, 3 years, and they do this thing every Halloween called the Spooky Flicks Fest. And I had sent them a copy of a movie called Trick or Treat, and it has Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne on the cover. And it stars Skippy from Family Ties. And it's one of the worst bait and switches.
Oh my gosh.
It's one of the worst bait and switches on a DVD cover ever because they're only in it for like 4 hot seconds. And it's about this rock star that dies, and then they play his record backwards and all hell breaks loose. Anyway, they sent me a message and said, hey, you're making us watch this piece of garbage, so you're going to come on and talk about it with us. So October 2nd, 2013, I did the Spooky Flicks Fest, and I never looked back.
Very cool. Very cool. And do you still listen? Is that podcast still around?
Yeah. Well, actually, they've changed the title. They've rebranded to Retro Movie Geeks. And my Spooky Flicks Fest from this last year was on just last week.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. Do they like? Oh well.
Just
we'll
ask
move on.
them.
I was just going to say, what kind of like, do they do just forgotten films or like really bad films?
Oh, they do everything. I mean,
okay. I love bad, like wonderfully bad movies.
Oh no, I'm a proud owner of Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. It's a musical.
That sounds wonderful.
And it has Jesus running around with a gun-toting Mary Magdalene and a Mexican wrestler.
I have to watch that.
It's worth the $10 on Amazon just for the title.
I could totally geek out about bad horror movies, but we'll just move on.
So what created the itch in you, Hammond, to create podcasts?
To be honest with you, after I got finished with that Forgotten Flicks, I came upstairs and I was in a mood, in such a great mood. I was giddy, and I felt I just couldn't stop talking. I just couldn't stop laughing about it. I just couldn't stop kind of reliving it. And I wanted to recreate that. So the next month, Brian Ibbett does a cover-thon where he raises money for Alzheimer's every year. And it's the weekend, it's the Friday after Thanksgiving. And I had donated something to the show, and he had me on, and we talked music, and I did an hour on that, and it was great. And the very next month, I launched Beyond the Playlist.
Wow. And what year was this? Probably about 2013. December
8th, 2013.
2 days after my birthday.
Yeah.
What was your setup like when you first started? Did you get like nervous and like feel like you had to go out and spend $1,000?
I had a microphone. Do
you remember the microphone?
Yeah, it was one of these.
One of these ATR 2100s.
Yeah.
Excellent mic.
And then I had a little 2-channel
portable recorder type thing?
No. It was a interface.
Okay.
A MIDI interface.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had it going out to a Tascam portable recorder on an external
very cool
device. And I recorded, and that first episode of Beyond the Playlist is horrible. I'm so timid and I'm mumbling.
Is it still out there?
I removed it for my own pride.
See, and I haven't done that yet with episode 1 of It's horrible. I mean, well, actually I would say it took a long time. It's still, I feel like some of them are still pretty bad.
My first podcast, they're all horrible.
No, actually, to be honest with you, episode 1 is actually up on archive.org now.
Okay. And I've heard a lot of old podcasters do that, move it over to archive.org, and I haven't dabbled
I've decided I'm going to put from 2013 to the beginning of 2015 on archive. And that way I don't have to keep them on my own RSS feed anymore. Cause it's just, I've got 300 some odd episodes now, and it's just too much to sort through. So I'm keeping the good ones on there, the ones that I enjoy listening to, and the ones that my wife won't make fun of me for.
Does she actually make fun of you?
Yes.
Does she really?
Yeah.
That's what a good wife does.
Wait, your wife makes fun of you?
Episode 3, I did a rundown of Blues Traveler, and she said I sounded like a timid 5th grader giving a book report as fast as I could.
Aww.
Because you were nervous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, solo mics are hard. People who do solo mic shows, those diary type shows, I give them all the credit in the world, because having a conversation with yourself
is hard.
Is a really difficult thing to do.
I don't know how Dan Carlin does it. He'll go for like 4 hours.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, Bill Burr. I don't know if you listen to Bill Burr.
I've tried. He just like sports too much.
Even my friend Justin Robert Young, he does politics. And he's able to pontificate extensively on politics. And he doesn't sound like an idiot when he's doing it by himself.
And you haven't asked for any secrets from people like him?
I've tried. Everyone has their own style.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe that's it. Maybe that's comfortable to him.
Yeah, I need a wall, a person to bounce off of.
What are those? So let's talk about the podcast that you currently do.
Okay.
You do, how many podcasts do you do? Like 3 or 4, right?
I'm okay. So Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C is my interview show about creativity. And I've spoken to, you name it, if they do creative endeavors, I've spoken to them. Everything from sculptors to actors, directors, musicians, special effects artists, all up and down the spectrum. Shortly after that, I did a show called Grumpy Cast, which is now defunct.
I do want to go listen to that because I saw it on your website and it sounds amazing.
What was that about?
Grumpy. It was basically me and 2 other guys. One was an ex-professional wrestler, another guy who lives in Seattle, and we just complained.
That's just my kind of show.
Those kids on the lawn
It was really, there are some true moments of brilliance on that show.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to listen to that too.
And then I did a show that was specifically aimed at, where we broke down episode by episode of the Booth at the End TV show that was on Hulu for 2 seasons.
Okay.
That was only like 10 or 12 episodes. But out of it, I got an interview with Xander Berkeley and Abby Miller. And Abby Miller went on to be on Aquarius and the Center TV show. And then Xander Berkeley's been in everything. I mean, he does everything. And then I got involved with soundography. And that's a crash course in music, one band at a time, that I do with Hall of Fame podcaster Brian Ibbett. I feel like I'm contractually obligated to call him that every time.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
It's like getting an MD.
Hey, as soon as I get in that Hall of Fame, you guys better call me podcast.
I will address you in the morning as such. Hello, Hall of Famer, podcaster.
But I've been doing that now. And
he's from Utah here, too.
No, he's from Denver.
Oh, he's from Denver.
Scott Johnson,
which from
runs Frog Pants,
Okay.
is from, he actually lives in Daybreak, I think.
Okay. Say his address, too.
I actually don't know it. I just know he's in Daybreak.
I was going to say, maybe, in case you want to stop
But anyway,
by.
I worked for him for a short time doing booking for him and Tom Merritt for their show Current Geek. And they changed formats and they no longer needed my services, but Tom keeps telling me as soon as they change back, I'm back in business with them. So, and then I did a show called Climb Out to Sobriety, which was a show based around helping people gain and maintain long-term sobriety.
Which you've never drank before.
No. But I've worked in the addiction and treatment worlds for 25 years.
Because I actually listened to some of that one. I was like, we're going to have Hammond on the show. I got to listen to some of his podcasts. And when you mentioned it, how you never drank, I was like, well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Never in your life drank.
No.
Wow.
So what was kind of the catalyst for you to decide to go into this 12-step? Because you even had like a support group and everything.
Yeah. So what helped with that was I had been working in different rehab facilities in both adolescent and adult facilities for years. And I decided I wanted to make a change to kind of work on my own. We decided we'd start this. And I know, the people who I'd have on the show working with me are well-respected members of the treatment community. And I got together with them and said, hey, do you guys want to try to make this a bigger run? And just see what happens. And they all said yes. And we we jumped in and started doing it.
Very cool. We need to actually take a break really, really fast and talk about our sponsors. But I want to talk more about these podcasts and everything you have going on when we come back. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, guys. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Five Wives Vodka. Week after week, we tell you about this awesome, delicious, local vodka. Five Wives Vodka. And not only do we sit here on a podcast week after week and tell you about them, but we're also drinkers of this fine product as well.
Oh, we absolutely are. I mean, every week we sit at home and have a nice drink made with Five Wives Vodka.
You can actually head on over to their websites, fivewivesvodka.com. They got great recipes on there and all kinds of great information about all of their products, which they have 3 different flavors that we're going to tell you about right now. They have the original Five Wives Vodka. This is made from the Utah Mountain spring water. It's 100% distilled corn spirit and gluten-free. The spring is hidden in beautiful Ogden Canyon. It's inaccessible by vehicle, so the water's hiked out 5 gallons at a time. So it's good.
And you can even watch Timothy Smith hike it out 5 gallons at a time.
Right there on his Facebook page.
Yeah, it's really great. And Five Wives Sinful is a flavor that they make that has a delicious cinnamon taste. It's not like other cinnamon products that give you a cinnamon candy taste. Sinful is like a morning cinnamon roll, and it only has 76 calories per ounce.
They also have the Five Wives Heavenly. This is a flavored vodka with a delicious vanilla taste. Heavenly's rich, buttery vanilla flavor, it comes through without coating your taste buds with sugar, and this results in more vanilla and less calories. Again, head on over to their website, fivewivesvodka.com. Really easy to remember. Find out more about them. They got recipes, all that good stuff right there online. The next time you head to the state liquor store, pick up a bottle, pick up an extra bottle because you need an extra bottle. And also, when you go to your local bar, make sure to ask for Five Wives Vodka by name. And many, many thanks to Five Wives Vodka for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Let's get back into that interview with Hammond. Can we actually talk about America's? We'll get back to chatting here.
Let's get back to chatting.
Can we talk about that America's Next? What's the name
America's, of it? So you think you've got the talent to be America's Next Top Podcasting Idol?
Break it down. Break it down for us.
What is it? I remember watching a video of it, and this was months ago. I kind of almost forgot completely about it.
So what it is, it's a how-to podcast wrapped up in all the tropes and jokes and kind of trappings of a reality TV show.
But it's just audio.
It's just an audio thing.
Is anything available now, or what's going to happen?
We are starting our initial, we've picked our 12 contestants, and we are starting our initial interviews with them next week as we record this. And then probably second, third week of November, we go into full-fledged production. And based on the amount of editing that I will have to do, since I'm just the producer of it and the editor, we will probably be a couple weeks behind production. So as it's being released, we'll be recording a couple weeks ahead.
And somebody like myself can just subscribe and listen to it, right?
Exactly.
Oh, excellent. Just based off of that name.
Mm-hmm.
So are you actually taking contestants and individually doing interviews like one person per show?
No, what we're doing is the setup of the show is for the first little bit, we're going to have introductory interviews with Brian, who's the host, and whoever their favorite judge is. We've got Scott Johnson, Nicole Spagnolo, and Justin Robert Young as the judges, and then Tom Merritt's a technical consultant. We're going to do interviews so people can kind of get to know them, get to know their voices, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then I'll have all that information, all that audio to cull for packages later on. And then each week they will be given a specific task, like create a movie review show or create an interview show or create a whatever. We've got 12 episodes planned. Mm-hmm. And the first few weeks is going to be teams of like 3 or 2 or whatever. And then once we hit to week 6, it'll be individual challenges from then on.
Because you're cutting people out just like
each week, just like America.
Interesting.
It's funny. I wanted to kind of, I thought he wanted to pattern it after American Idol style.
Okay.
He wants to pattern it more after Face Off or British Bake Off style. So we watch everyone go through the process, and then at the end, I wanted to kind of see everyone's process individually. But he's the host. And,
and what do they win? What do they win if they?
They're going to get a year of on the Frog Pants mega feed, which is a pretty big deal. And then there's we've got a mixer and a microphone and a set of headphones and some other stuff set up as prizes.
Very cool. What a unique, what's been the response like from people?
Well, for the most part, it's been really, really positive. Lots of good excitement, lots of good conversation. We had a lot of interest as far as people who wanted to be part of it.
And are you going to be part of it as a contestant, or you're just doing the editing?
I am only doing the production. I am the producer of it.
I'm actually really excited. I think this is especially for people like us, because we know how hard we work and try to learn to curate content and how to do all this stuff. It'll be so much fun to follow someone's, like 12 people's progress into kind of the world.
And we set the standard that they had to be broadcasting for 5 years or less because we wanted people who were new, quote unquote new. Because if you've been at it for 5 years or more, you've kind of got it down.
I don't know about that. I'm still trying to figure out the ropes, and I've been going a minute. Don't you think podcasting, though, is a continual learning experience?
It is. It always is.
It seems like to me you're always learning a new, Spotify all of a sudden.
Well, as soon as you learn something, it changes too.
And even the podcast equipment that they're coming out nowadays. When I started podcasting, it was like, well, I don't know, and this and that.
Just recently, I've been digging. I use Logic Pro.
Okay.
As my editing.
Do you like that?
I love Logic.
I haven't messed around with Logic.
And so I've been tinkering around a lot lately with EQs and different plugins for enhancing sound and getting rid of noises and just making it sound better.
There's a lot of good plugins out there.
And so I've discovered, 4 or 5 plugins from Wave. They're not sponsoring anything, but Wave's plugins are awesome. And I've been loving that journey of learning that stuff.
There's an excellent group on Facebook, Podcast Editors. I don't know. Are you in it?
I am.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. There's some, good information in there from
That's actually where I learned about, what was it? There was one that they were talking about. It was the Vocal Writer by Waves.
Okay.
And it's in case you have someone on the show and their levels are all over the place, or you're quiet, the other person isn't, and it automatically evens it out without a lot of compression, so it doesn't compress.
So it doesn't distort the voices as much.
Yeah, Levelator.
I love Levelator too, but it also increases the noise of ambient noise as well, and that can get really frustrating.
And certain interviews, especially Skype interviews, which you do a lot of Skype interviews. Luckily, I do mostly in person, so it's a little easier to deal with.
It's a privilege, you're locally based. Your show's about Salt Lake, so. Yeah.
I've wondered that. I wondered, would it be tough? Because sometimes it would be nice to just do a Skype interview or a phone call.
You don't even have to put on pants.
Yeah.
Just sit at your computer. That's why I want to do podcasting.
I've wondered if it would lose the localness of the podcast.
I can tell just from doing this, there's a certain energy that I don't get with mine because we're all in the same room, sitting at the same table, looking at each other in the eyeball.
And that was actually one of the big reasons I started this podcast, because when I started it, I'm like, I want to be able to sit and look at the person and get their.
Well, there's something about having like an old school face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to be able to connect with people long distance, but it's never quite the same.
And I've gotten lucky.
Cool.
I feel like my interviews for Beyond the Playlist have all been, for the most part, pretty natural and pretty easy to listen to. And especially after the guest gets relaxed with what I'm doing and who I am, and that I'm not out to get them, and that I'm being supportive, and that it's different from they normally get. But, some of them, you have long distance. You sometimes have crappy Skype connections. Sometimes they have bad internet.
And so you just deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, I did an interview with Dot Marie Jones last year, who she was on Glee, and she had entered a film into the Artemis Women's Film Festival called Combat Nuns, which, by the way, if you can see that.
That sounds
it's
wonderful.
Short.
This guy's got more awesome movie titles than I know what to do with.
It's a short about this kind of militant nun, and it's awesome. She smokes a cigar. She rides a Harley. Anyway, I was interviewing her.
Epic.
And I don't know what was up with her internet, but I had to do some pretty magical editing just to make her seem mildly coherent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Do you ever find that, because from something you said, it made me wonder, do people usually put up their guard when you start to interview them? Do you kind of have to let them know that it's okay and you're there to be their friend and have a good time and not point out their flaws?
It was more so at the front when I first was starting. It had to prove I wasn't a schmuck. Because random guy connects with you over Twitter, and all of a sudden it's, who are you? What do you have going? But now I'm 5 years in, I have 350 episodes, and I'm developing this catalog of people where they kind of know each other. I'm only interviewing people who I want to talk to. That's the best part about the show, is if I don't like what you do, then I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of Venn diagram overlapping with the people I talk to now. So they get a lot of, oh yeah, you had so-and-so on and they really enjoyed talking to you. Or I listened to this interview that you did with so-and-so and that was great. So yes. So it's starting to pay off. The digital footprint starting to get a little more defined and more respected, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the beginning, it was hard to prove you weren't going to be an idiot.
Well, because they have nothing to base you on. Same thing.
Well,
with
and that's
this
the hard
podcast,
thing with today's world and the technology. Any idiot can put stuff out. Any idiot could put out a show for 10 years. It could be terrible, but it's World Wide Web, man, it's accessible to all. So that's a very interesting.
Do you have a
point.
dream interview that you would like?
I've got a couple.
Or do you not want to talk about those?
No,
you don't
I've
want to
got
jinx it.
No, I've got a few that I would really like to talk to. I would love to get Steve Vai on sometime. I would love to get the other members of Dream Theater on, John Petrucci. I've had Jordan Rudess on before. I would love to have some of those guys on. But I would really enjoy talking to like Bruce Campbell sometime. But I'm actually afraid that I would get into it and it wouldn't be what I would.
It would let you down.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that a little bit. And it wouldn't be because of him per se, but maybe because of me and my expectations of it. So I don't know. I mean, I keep plugging away. I've got a lot of people who I have scheduled to talk to, and I keep just working away. And
I mean, you podcast so much. Seriously though, how do you do it? I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. So right now I'm doing some consulting for a facility teaching staff how to work with kids in a rehab facility. And that's 2 to 3 days a week. And then, Mondays and Fridays, typically I do interviews and edit shows. And then usually Saturdays I catch up on social media, any editing I didn't finish throughout the week, checking on stats, that kind of stuff. And then Sundays I make myself take the day off.
It's good to take a day off. I mean, especially nowadays, this hustle.
Yeah.
Grind.
And that's something I learned. That's something I learned when I worked in theater, because when I was working at the Grand as the assistant technical director and resident stage manager, we worked 6 days a week. And sometimes it was anywhere from 8 to 18 hours a day, depending on where we were in production. And the lady I worked for, she's like, you have to make a day off and you can't do anything those days. And so it's kind of a habit I started, and I've been doing it ever since.
Well, that's what God did, right?
And it sounds like your wife is pretty supportive.
Oh yeah, my wife is awesome.
And that's important.
Yeah, my wife is awesome with this. I mean, when I came home and said I wanted to start a show, as a business and kind of go into this, try to make a run at it full time, she said, sure, as long as we can pay our bills. And I did. And we're making a run at it. And she's now, going back to work, and I'm working more at home and helping out with the kids, and it's kind of making a full run. Like my 13-year-old daughter, when she was in 5th grade, she's in 8th grade now. She did a show called the Between Us podcast about life as a tween.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
And she only did it for about a year, but I tell you, she was hitting better numbers than I was.
Really?
Because a 10-year-old girl, 12, 11-year-old girl
is
having
it still
her own
available?
show. I took it down, and it's now, I've got it. I'll probably throw up on archive soon.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's something that I would love to get my kids into.
Oh, no. My 4th grader, she goes to school. Their assistant principal reached out to me and wants me to help out with a podcasting club for the school.
That would be so cool.
So I'll be working with, elementary school kids doing a show here soon too.
Do you help a lot of people get podcasts going?
I try to. I mean, I help out with theme songs. I help out with editing. I help out with kind of ideas on how to make you sound better or how to do better interviews.
So what would you tell somebody? Because I get a lot of people reach out to me, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast right now want to start a podcast. That age-old question, Hammond, we get asked all the time. What would you tell somebody who wants to start besides just do it? I mean, that's the common response.
Yeah. The thing I would do is you got to find something you're going to love doing.
Yeah.
For instance, I could never do a show about financial planning because 1, I don't know anything about it, but 2, I don't love it.
But do you think a person has to, for example, Chrissy's brother wanted to do a keto podcast, but he felt he didn't know enough about keto.
It's not about knowing, because you'll learn as you go, because the pressure will be on for you to become, I don't want to say an expert, but knowledgeable in it. It's like people who do these true crime podcasts. They're not criminologists by any stretch.
You learn along the way.
You learn along the way, but it's got to be something you're passionate about, because you're going to be doing it every week until your exit plan says you're not.
And it's impressive. 350 episodes of the one podcast that you did. We just launched 350 of I Am Salt Lake. And it's been a journey.
Yeah. And it's something you have to love doing. You can't be half involved or half invested, because if you are, it's going to fade, or you'll get tired of it, or it'll become a job.
I get a lot of people telling me, they're like, man, this podcast, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Episode 15, 18 comes out, and oh my God, I don't know if I want to keep doing this.
I remember when I hit 10, I'm like, okay, I'm over the hump at 10. And then I ran straight into 100. I'm like, okay, I'm at 100. I ran into straight into 200.
You're like, well, okay.
And now I'm like, okay, what's the exit strategy for this?
After a while, you're like, do I just keep doing this?
I don't have an exit strategy for this one.
What would you change about podcasting? The medium in general, it seems like podcasting is such a unique thing where I feel like something could be changed. I just don't know what.
I wish that people would look at it more as a form of education and entertainment, even for the people who are doing it, because we would all love to do it professionally as money.
Sure.
But that's not realistic. So if you start at it as the idea of it's fun, it's educational, it's entertainment, I'm sharing what I know with people or what I love with people, the rest of it either will fall into place with work and effort, or it won't, but you won't care because you're doing it because you love it. That idea that I'm starting a show so I can get famous and people know who I am, that's weird.
That's a setup for disappointment too.
It is. And I've noticed there's a lot of that lately. I don't know how to say this without sounding crappy, but that thing we went to, there was a lot of that there.
At the summit, yeah.
I think a lot of people are seeing podcasting kind of hit this golden age, air quotes, and they were like, oh man, I could do that too. And then, like you said, like I'll be famous and I'll be rich. And they don't realize how much work it is and how we do it because we just really love to talk about stuff.
And we don't all have the resources that Serial has.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, people don't realize there's how many, 20 people behind that working 40 hours a week.
And not just that, it's a whole network of NPR behind it. Sure. I mean, the moth is the moth because it's got a juggernaut of people behind it.
Well, in the advertising, there's a lot. I mean, how often do you find a podcast and you're like, man, how did I never hear about this? Because the advertising and the distribution, it bums me out. Do you deal much with video at all?
I will be at some point soon, but right now, no.
Because it's a bummer to me how much video has taken off versus audio, when audio is so much easier to consume.
And it frankly, I like it better because I can't.
It's that visual.
I can't do YouTube in my car, and which is where I consume 90% of my podcasting.
Or like if you're doing something like at work, we can't sit and watch videos at work, but you can put in a podcast.
And I mean, I have turned on YouTube and just listened to the audio of it, but it's just surprising to me how many people, or even how big YouTube is. It's very frustrating.
I've got friends who, some of the shows I do on the regular, like Cord Killers or Daily Tech News Show, they'll release audio versions and video versions because they know people
want it.
Yeah. And so
it'll double your downloads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I need to do that with I Am Salt Lake. Get some cameras and live stream it.
Yeah, I think with this setup in here, it'd be easy to throw a couple cameras up and have someone playing with OBS while you're doing the show.
Yeah, definitely.
In the game plan.
So besides podcasting, Hammond, what are some of your other hobbies and interests? Or is there any?
No, yeah. I mean, I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed theater. Right now I'm trying to get my kids involved in theater. My youngest is taking classes at the Utah Children's Theater.
Nice.
Oh, that's so cool.
I have been trying to learn how to play the Chapman stick for the last 8 years.
What is that?
It's a 10-string tap style instrument.
Is that what's in your Facebook profile? That thing looks awesome.
It's the big, long, skinny guitar like
Yes.
It looks
thing.
like, what was I going to...
It's like a sitar.
The sitar.
But it plays and sounds more like if a piano and a guitar had a child.
And are you just teaching yourself?
Yeah,
lessons?
I've taken lessons from a guy in New York named Steve Adelson. He's a jazz stick player.
In New York? How does that work
We
out?
use Skype.
Hey, brilliant. That's actually a good idea.
I've taken lessons from Greg Howard, who used to play with Dave Matthews. But, it's just a matter of getting a few books and learning how to play. And then I played harmonica through all of college and did studio work and played in bands. And so I still do that on occasion.
You're pretty good at harmonica?
Yeah.
Do you teach lessons?
I could.
Because I would love to learn.
Yeah.
I have probably a harmonica.
Did you bring it in your bag? He was playing it to the baby right before we left. He always has a harmonica.
I usually do.
Look at this.
You have your harmonica?
I have a harmonica.
Oh my gosh.
Do you mind sharing?
I don't know. I don't even know if this is a good harmonica. Yeah. Oh man,
That's so rad.
My grandfather played the harmonica. I have faint memories. He passed away. I was quite young. The violin and the harmonica. I took a lot of violin lessons growing up, but I always wanted to learn to play the harmonica good. I just blow into it and impress our 1-year-old daughter loves it. She thinks I'm the greatest thing in the world.
I know.
Yeah, I started playing, kind of playing along with Huey Lewis.
Okay, just like in the music, you put it on.
Just played along with that. And then in 91, I discovered Blues Traveler.
Okay.
And John Popper.
Yeah.
And then it was a matter of trying to play like him.
Wow.
And I remember kind of vividly, I was playing at the Dead Goat one night.
Oh, the Dead Goat.
And
Chrissy's never been there.
Is that still in existence?
No.
All right.
Well, we'll talk about the Dead Goat, but finish the comment.
Okay.
And so I started a John Popper run and I didn't have the breathing down right. And I passed out right there at the Dead Goat. Woke up kind of in a daze staring at the bass drum.
Wow.
And, I have to learn how to breathe better.
So you've been around the music scene for a while.
Yeah.
Here. So Zephyr, obviously, you probably remember Zephyr and DVA.
DVA. I worked at the Ivy Tower down in Provo when I was in college.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, you have. Sorry, Chrissy's is
No,
like
this
over
is
here.
I've
out of that.
And I
not
lived
a
across the
music
street from the
nerd.
Palace. So
The Palace. I went to the Palace many a time. What was that on 900 E? Was that
9th East, right there behind Stan's.
Yeah, and then there was wasn't there like a cafe across the street that like acoustic shows were at?
Oh, Mama's Cafe.
Mama's Cafe.
I used to play there a lot. Kim Simpson used to play there.
There was a band, Peter Breinholt,
yeah.
played there, and then there was another band started with an A. It was like kind of a hippie jam band. I thought, my mind's blank. I think it started with an A.
But I had my best friend in college played for Stretch Armstrong.
Oh man, that was a good band.
And we used to go to shows at the Meridian all the time, and used to see him open for Swimmercial Swim. And
sorry, Chrissy.
No, this is great. I love it.
Did you remember Agnes Poetry?
yes, of course I remember Agnes Poetry. They were like
two
Utah's
brothers and a sister.
It was Utah's version of Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
They were actually really good.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there was a band I loved. They were called Ritual. It was basically two guys with a drum machine playing like ministry style industrial music.
Sure.
Everything was through a distortion pedal. It was like two guys in a Mac, old iMac, through a distortion pedal, and it was like this really weird, hardcore.
Was this down in Utah? See, I used to live in Utah County because my mom still lives in Orem, and that's where we moved out of California. So I lived there for
my first job in college was at
16
classic skating.
Okay, yeah, classic
I love
skating.
classic skating.
I bet. I mean, I don't. Well, what years were you down there?
88 through 94.
So I think we were early 90s that we moved there. I think it was. I was about 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like I used to play with a band that worked out of Herger Music down near the post office down there.
And that name rings a bell too.
And they used to call themselves the Three Little Pigs, and then they changed their name to Wave of Blues.
None of those ringing a bell.
And they had horn sections. All guys who were in synthesis would play with horns, and Dave Wilbur was the bass player and kind of lead band guy.
That name rings a bell.
He's been part of the Utah season. He runs School of Rock down in Utah County.
Okay, okay. Do you ever make it to like Velour down there now?
I don't.
Yeah, because they have a lot of good shows.
The last time I went to a show down in there was the death of Stretch Armstrong at the Omni back in '97.
Okay.
I remember the Omni. I have been to Velour. I feel like I need to pitch in here something. Like I used to set up drums in Velour.
Hammond and I were just geeking out a little bit
I think
over.
it's great.
So what? Okay. Besides local music, do you have like a really memorable concert that you've been to?
I've seen
just about everybody.
Well, no, I mean, lately I've been spending a lot of time. I've kind of fallen in love with a band called Mushroom Head. They're out of Cleveland.
I don't know if I've ever listened to
They wear masks.
That sounds fun.
They're very theatrical.
Why not?
They do a great version of Rumor Has It, a cover of Rumor Has It that's awesome. But anyway, I discovered them back in 1999, and I've seen them now 6 or 7 times. I've had past members and current members of the band on my show. I really enjoy them. They're fun. They were just at the Complex a few weeks ago, or about a month ago.
So you still make it out to a lot of live shows?
Not as many as I'm old. So live shows don't have quite the appeal.
Do you ever feel out of place at them sometimes?
I felt like a narc at this last show.
Yeah, they're like, oh, who's the old guy in the back?
I mean, it was me and the band about the same age. And so it was...
How do you make time for all this? Like to consume music, consume podcasts, to edit podcasts, to do podcasts.
And you have kids.
I mean,
it really is a matter of... I learned when I was in high school that the busier I was, the better I organized my time.
Yeah, I'm similar.
And then I also worked like 65, 80 hours a week for 10 years when I had 2 jobs, when my wife was staying home when the kids were young. And so it really is just a matter of you block out time, you use that time as effectively as possible. And when that time is up, you move on to the next project and you can come back to it later. And you don't really beat yourself up. And you learn how to work really fast. You learn how to work efficiently. You cut out distractions.
Yeah. Facebook, I guess.
Yeah. And so it's just a matter of, like when I'm editing a show, I only have Logic open. I don't have Twitter running in the background. I don't have the browser open. It's just
smart.
It's just that. And I don't, when I'm listening to something, I'm in the car and kind of focused, or if I'm doing something specifically for a show or watching a movie, it's just that. I don't have 2 or 3 things going at the same time because I miss something.
Smart advice. I like that. If you could have any Skype call with any living person, who would it be and why?
I think I would want to talk to, what's her name? Kathleen Kennedy.
And you're going to have to tell me who this is.
She's the one in charge of all the Star Wars stuff.
So I take it you're a pretty big Star Wars.
I've been raised on it.
Yeah.
But I would like to talk to her about what she sees, not just as the legacy, but as the future of it, because it's in her hands. She's like Kevin Feige, except that she's the Star Wars person of it. And I would like to talk to her about, because it's not just about the stories. It's about the characters. It's about the legacies. It's about the impression it's making on culture. I mean, because
there's a whole new generation.
Yeah. I mean, the filmmakers of today are all quote the first 3 Star Wars films as the reason why they're making movies now.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a person alive that I've spoken to that hasn't said, I saw Star Wars when I was a kid and that made me want to make movies. So I would like to see how she feels with that kind of responsibility. That's something I would like to ask about and get more information about.
Huh. Very cool.
That is, I would not want that responsibility ever. Good for her.
Mm-mm.
Let's shift gears a little bit to Salt Lake City. Have a few standard questions we ask on the podcast. Hammond here is, if somebody was visiting, like say they were visiting this upcoming weekend or any weekend, what would you tell them? Hey, go check this out. Go do this. A building, area of town. I don't know. There's been so many different responses.
I really think that there's a burgeoning kind of community of fun things to do.
Sure. Yeah.
There's Quarters, which is a lot of fun.
It is
such a fun
skee ball, drunk skee ball. I mean, just skee ball.
But then there's the axe throwing place down on State across from Fashion Place Mall. That's a new thing.
That thing is just hopping. I see a lot of pictures on Facebook.
And oddly enough, there's a really good theater community in town.
Yeah.
And there's always good shows going on. And the quality of them is usually pretty outstanding. I mean, for a while, it was kind of one of those things where like, okay, if you want to see a show, you had Pioneer and maybe the Hale. Mm-hmm. But now everybody's kind of up their game. You have the Eccles. You've got all these other places now. And and everything is kind of upped its game. And then you've got places, locally right now, like Nightmare on 13th, which is killing it. And you got Fear Factory and a bunch of really high quality, fun haunted houses out there, which is all theater.
I think fun and haunted houses should never be in the same
And
sentence.
the other thing that I really enjoy doing is once a month, I go to the local wrestling promotion, UCW Zero.
Wait, what is this now? I'm not in the wrestling scene, but I want to be.
We have a local wrestling promotion here in town. It's like WWE style wrestling promotion called UCW Zero. It's been going on for 16, 17 years. It's a ton of fun. They go once a month. My nephew's a member of the cast and of the roster. It's a ton of fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Where would you find out more information about that?
UCWZero.com.
Yeah, I just Google it.
They wrestle over at the UCW facilities over on Orange Street.
That sounds
I'll have to check that out. What about, would you change anything about Salt Lake if you could?
I wish that there was a little bit more open-mindedness in the culture.
And that comes from a non-drinker.
Yes. I think it's just that there seems to be such a wall around the cultural haves that sometimes they don't think about how they're treating the quote-unquote cultural have-nots.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids don't go to the predominant culture here. And my wife isn't. And I'm barely. And it's odd how that has affected friendships and relationships and social settings and what birthday parties you go to and how they respond to certain questions. Like my kids, they grew up going to school and having sleepovers with their friends. And there's a group of people who won't do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad.
And it's a weird thing to explain to your kid that the reason they don't is because they've been told not to.
Yeah. It is unfortunate.
And I'm
really
not
hoping
pitching
it gets
hate.
better.
No, you're not.
You're pitching love.
It is one of
Just more
those
love.
things. I mean, it's the same thing with myself. I mean, I just had my first baby. Well, I didn't have it, but
you contributed.
Well, we have a 1-year-old,
Yeah.
and I think about her growing up here, and I hope it's not hard for her.
I think it's becoming less so. I mean, I think we're fortunate that we're in the area of town we are. I think we're fortunate that we have the community that we've developed around us. And I also think that the state is actually going through, and the city is going through a cultural upheaval, whether they're ready for it or not.
Yeah, they realize all these people are moving here for jobs and all of that.
I mean, the Silicon Slopes just on the other side of the mountain, that's brought in a lot of people that I don't know if this town was ready for.
I get a lot of people reaching out on this podcast because they're moving here for a job or for this or that. And they use this podcast as a resource to find out about everything cool going on in Salt Lake.
There's a ton of cool things, and I love living here. and I wouldn't wish that I lived anywhere else right now. But there are some hangups that do drive me a bit batty.
Yeah, and that could be anywhere though.
Yes,
too. I've thought about that. I've thought,
yeah,
if I moved here, there would be this.
It's not exclusive to this because every city has that problem.
Yeah,
but because I'm knee deep in it, it does seem exceedingly profound in my my current situation.
It's a little tougher to ignore it.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
What about any favorite local eating spots? Do you have any favorites?
There's a place on 5600 West. It's a sushi place that I found not too that long ago. I'd have to look up the name of it. It's steak and sushi place down there.
But it's pretty good.
They're awesome. And the people who run it, they recognize us. We've almost got regulars. The lady she's always there. She takes our orders. She's super friendly.
So wait, there's steaks and sushi?
Yeah, it's a Japanese steakhouse kind of, but it's not one of those cook it in front of your table. It's not like teppanyaki, but it's a smaller place and
we might have to go check that out, Chrissy.
We're definitely going to have to go check that out.
I was going to say, I'm a steak guy. Chrissy's a sushi.
It's really
I know. It's like the perfect
It's really good. And they're super nice people.
Very
cool.
cool.
I'm going to Google it. I need to find out what it is because we're going to have to reference this.
Yeah. It's 5600 West, south of the 21st Highway. And I think it's just called Steak and Sushi.
As we kind of wrap this up, Hammond, I'm going to put all of your podcast links at iamsaltlake.com with this episode. So people listening can go there if they're driving or referring, or to be able to refer to it if they can't write it down. But let's run down the list of your podcasts, or at least the ones you want to talk about.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, currently I'm in production with Soundography, which is soundography.com. And we are The Soundography on Twitter. And then I do Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C, which is my interview show. And it's Jay Hammond C on Twitter. And go to jhammondc.com.
Very cool.
And if you want some really great steak and sushi,
did you find
you can
it?
hit up Sumo Steak and Sushi.
Is that the name of it? All right. Sumo.
2843 South, 5600 West.
Very cool. I'll have to go check it out.
We're totally going there. You have no choice.
That's kind of a neighborhood I don't always hit up. But
yeah.
I've had a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and doing the podcast. Was there anything that we didn't discuss that you were like, gosh, I really wanted to talk about?
I actually was really, I've loved the conversation starters you put on Facebook, and I feel like I tend to give the answers that you like.
Oh, very cool.
In fact, one of them, it was funny because one of them in particular, you're like, how long does a podcast need to be?
Oh, and that was such a funny response one, because I mean, I don't think they need to be any length.
And that was something that came up at that summit we went to.
Yeah.
And I responded as long as it needs to be.
Yeah. Which is exactly the correct answer.
And the funniest thing was about 2 minutes after I put that up, you liked it. And then you sent me the message saying, hey, do you want to come on this show? I'm like, all right, I qualified.
Well, no, you know what it is though, is because you've been on the list, as people I wanted to bring on the show, because you seem like a cool person to get to know, but it goes back to being top of mind. It's like, oh yeah, I should just hit this guy up right now. Why he's right here, messages the thing. But that was a funny question, because it is interesting how people sit and try to dissect a podcast, and it confuses me, people that were saying like 20 minutes. And it's like, you can put a podcast on pause.
Well, and even the people that said 20 minutes, they're like, unless it's this podcast, in which case it could be 2 hours long.
But then you've got like Mike Rowe's show, where if you take out the ads, it's maybe 7 minutes long.
Whose show is that?
Mike Rowe, the guy that does Dirty Jobs.
Okay. Yeah.
He does That's the Way I Heard It. And if you take out the ads for ZipRecruiter, it's a 7-minute show.
Oh, that sounds awful.
And he tells these little tidbits. It's kind of what's his name? That's the way I heard it. Guy, and that's
guy.
No. Now you know the rest of the story. That guy.
No clue.
Radio personality. Anyway, he's kind of.
I'm like, I don't know anything.
Harvey Steaton.
Harvey. No, not that one.
Anyway, he tells these little tidbits of history, these clever little stories wrapped around history.
That sounds good, though.
And it's a great show, but it's just 7 minutes long if you take out the ads. And so I let them stack up for 2-3 weeks and then just play them all straight through.
And that's usually what I do with my shorter podcasts. But it is interesting. Anyway, but Chrissy usually has a question that she likes to end the podcast out with, so I'm going to let her ask this.
I feel like you've given us some really great insight, but can you give us one more piece of life advice to leave with our listeners?
You have to you can follow your dreams to a certain extent, but you have to be practical about it. I mean, my dad was military, and When I told him I wanted to be a theater major, he was like, that's great for a minor, but you need to be able to pay bills. So I was practical, and the fact that I was practical to start with has let me to be in a position where I can follow my dreams later. So you can follow, but you have to be prepared and you have to be practical.
I love it. That's kind of my motto too. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I always tell people, let's catch up down the road, right? That's the beautiful thing about podcasts. Thank you so much.
Many thanks again to Hammond Chamberlain for joining us on this episode of the podcast and sharing his story. Head on over to our website, iamsaltlake.com/352 for all the links for you to get in touch with him and check out his podcast.
All right. One of the biggest complaints that both Chrissy and I hear from people all the time, they tell us, I can't find out about all of the events going on here in Salt Lake City. I run into the same problem as well. That's why we're working on a brand new project that will put a daily email right into your inbox first thing in the morning of the events going on in Salt Lake City for that day. This is going to be absolutely free for you to sign up. And of course, you can unsubscribe at any time, even though you probably won't want to. So it'd be awesome if you went, signed up. That way, when we get this launched, we'll have some subscribers there. And of course, listeners of I Am Salt Lake podcast. If you head on over to slc.events, type that right into your web browser, slc.events. It'll take you to the website where you enter your name and email and you're subscribed. It's as simple as that. So go sign up for the email list.
That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again to our amazing sponsor for this episode, Five Wives Vodka.
Also, many thanks to our awesome Patreon supporters. We'd love it if you would consider becoming a Patreon supporter as well. You can head on over to patreon.com/IamSaltLake. It's a great way to support the show that way as well.
And don't forget, you can always send us an email at hello@iamsaltlake.com. And you can send us physical letters and packages to P.O. Box 4412, Salt Lake City, Utah 84110.
All right, guys, have a great week. Make sure to get out and enjoy the city, support local, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And good night, Grammy.